Okay, let's unpack this. You sent us some really interesting stuff about water, from how it's organized inside you to how much you actually need, and even its connection to things like energy and weight.
Yeah, really diverse sources.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Did you know that something so basic is actually orchestrating countless processes within you, like every single second?
It's incredible when you think about it that way.
So we're diving deep today into the essential role of water in the human body. We're using a Vietnamese text that gets into the nitty-gritty of water distribution and function.
And that Mayo Clinic article on daily intake, which is pretty practical.
Right, and also a transcript from Real Life Wellness on YouTube talking about how hydration impacts weight and energy.
So, quite a mix.
Yeah, our mission.
Yeah.
To pull out the most vital insights from all this and really understand why water is so fundamental to your health and well-being.
What's fascinating here right from the start is just the sheer scale of water's presence. We often think of it as just something we drink, right?
Yep.
But these sources highlight that it's the body's main chemical component. Mayo Clinic says 50% to 70% of our weight. That's huge.
Wow, yeah.
And the Vietnamese text, it jumps right into how this water is organized. It's kind of like understanding the blueprint of a city before you explore the buildings.
Exactly. It's not just sloshing around in there, is it?
Not at all.
The Vietnamese text explains that the total body water, about 45 liters in an average person, it says it's mainly divided into two big compartments.
Right, the intracellular and extracellular.
Yeah, intracellular, inside your cells, and extracellular, which is outside. And they're separated by cell membranes that are actually, well, pretty picky about what goes in and out, including water.
Like little beekeepers.
Kind of like having security checkpoints at the entrances to these cellular worlds, yeah.
Yes, and that extracellular water is then further divided. You've got intravascular water. That's the water in our blood vessels. The text mentions about 3 liters.
Okay.
Think of this as the water flowing through the city's rivers and canals, you know.
Good analogy.
Then there's interstitial water. That's the fluid between our cells, and that's a larger amount, around 12 liters.
Right, surrounding everything.
Exactly, like the network of smaller streams and lakes between the buildings. And these two are separated by the walls of the blood vessels, which also control the chemical exchange.
And it's interesting that the Vietnamese text points out other extracellular fluids, like in our eyeballs or joints
Synovial sacs.
in the digestive system.
That's,
Apparently, these don't really mix much with the other extracellular water. They're more like isolated ponds.
right, distinct pools.
It also makes a key point that the amount of water in our blood vessels and inside our cells stays relatively constant,
Pretty stable, yeah.
while the interstitial fluid acts like a buffer, kind of adjusting to keep the overall body water levels balanced.
This buffering role of interstitial fluid is crucial for maintaining homeostasis.
Homeostasis, right, keeping things stable.
Exactly. The body's ability to keep everything in a balanced state. And interstitial fluid is key for water levels. And the movement of water between these compartments, it isn't random.
No.
It follows this fundamental principle called osmosis. The Vietnamese text does a great job explaining this. Water just moves passively from areas where there's a high concentration of water molecules.
To areas where there's less water.
Exactly. To areas with a lower concentration. It's driven by the concentration of solutes, the dissolved stuff. More dissolved stuff means lower water concentration.
Right, so water's just trying to even things out across these membranes until the osmotic pressure is equal on both sides. It's like a natural balancing act.
Precisely.
So next time you feel thirsty after eating something salty, that's osmosis in action, right? Your body's trying to balance out the water concentration.
That's a perfect example. And the Vietnamese text emphasizes that our bodies have really sophisticated ways to control this osmotic balance, mainly by managing water movement and the concentration of those charged metal ions.
Cations and anions.
Yeah, cations like sodium and potassium, and anions like chloride.
Which brings us to electrolytes.
Directly. The text defines these as ions that conduct electricity when dissolved in water, sodium, chloride, potassium, like in salt solutions. You hear about them in sports drinks all the time.
Right.
What's fascinating here is just how precisely the body manages water distribution at a cellular level. This isn't just passive movement, it's a carefully regulated system. It has to be to maintain the right internal environment for everything else.
Okay, so water is strategically placed, carefully managed, but what exactly is it doing? Both the Vietnamese text and the Mayo Clinic article really dig into its functions. First up, solvent.
Ah, yes, the universal solvent.
The Vietnamese text calls water a living solvent, which I thought was interesting. It says without it, very few chemical reactions could happen, and our basic life functions couldn't be regulated or carried out.
It dissolves so many things.
Yeah, so many different chemicals, both inside and outside cells,
Mhm.
allowing them to exist and move around and do their jobs.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see water isn't just there. It's actively facilitating every single exchange, every transformation that keeps us alive.
Like digestion.
Exactly. Think about digestion. The Vietnamese text reminds us that as soon as food enters our body, it mixes with these water-rich digestive fluids, saliva, stomach acid, intestinal fluids helping break it down.
So if you're dehydrated, could that actually slow down digestion or nutrient absorption?
It certainly could impact efficiency. Then those nutrients get absorbed into the blood, which is mostly water, about 3 liters itself, and that ferries them to all our tissues and cells.
And it's not just nutrients, right?
Yeah.
Water in the blood also transports hormones, antibodies.
And waste products, getting rid of the bad stuff like carbon dioxide and urea, taking them to the lungs and kidneys.
Right. Then there's that interstitial fluid again, that 12-liter buffer zone. It's like a middleman.
Yeah, a reservoir. Nutrients from the blood can hang out there before going into cells, and waste from cells can go there before heading to the blood.
And inside the cells.
Intracellular water is the stage. It's the medium for all those biochemical reactions and for transporting substances within the cell itself.
Wow, so it's involved in literally everything.
Pretty much. Beyond being a solvent, water is also a direct participant in reactions. It's a reactant.
How does that work?
The Vietnamese text explains that water molecules often break down into ions H+, E2, or H to take part. A key example is hydrolysis.
Hydrolysis, breaking things down with water.
Exactly. Breaking down large molecules like carbs, fats, proteins into smaller ones by reacting with water. It's incredible how active water is, even chemically.
And it's a lubricant, too.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The Vietnamese text points out how water provides lubrication in our joints.
That synovial fluid.
Yeah, and in membranes like around the lungs, the diaphragm, even in our mouths. It allows for smooth movement, reduces friction.
Think about how stiff your joints can feel when you're dehydrated.
Yeah, exactly. That's a direct result of not enough lubrication.
Another crucial function, detailed in both sources, is temperature regulation. Water is amazing at absorbing and distributing heat.
So the heat from our metabolism gets spread around.
Yep, distributed throughout the body by water. And when we get too hot, this excess heat is released through direct transfer, radiation, and importantly, evaporation.
Through breathing and sweating.
Right. And the Vietnamese text gives a powerful statistic. When 1 liter of sweat evaporates from our skin, it takes about 600 kilocalories of heat with it.
600, wow.
Even when we're not actively sweating, we have insensible perspiration. We lose another, 350 to 700 milliliters of water a day just through that.
Unnoticeable loss, and the text mentions subcutaneous fat acting as insulation.
Yeah, slows heat loss. Good in the cold, maybe not so helpful when you're overheated.
Right, and our blood vessels in the skin can dilate or constrict to control heat loss, too.
A whole thermoregulation system heavily reliant on water.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Think about how quickly you feel sluggish without enough water, especially when it's hot or you're exercising.
That fatigue, yeah.
That's your body relying on these very functions we're talking about. So staying hydrated isn't just about feeling less thirsty. It's directly linked to how well your body can manage its temperature, its energy.
Absolutely. Precisely. Now, where does all this essential water come from?
Good question. Our sources outline the obvious. Natural sources, processed beverages, and the food we eat.
But the Vietnamese text also highlights something fascinating. Metabolic water?
Oh yeah, the water our body makes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Produced as a byproduct when we break down proteins, fats, carbs, even alcohol. This can be a significant chunk, around 15% of our daily intake, maybe 270 milliliters or so.
It's amazing to think our bodies are constantly producing their own water.
Shows how intricate our metabolism is, and it highlights that hydration isn't solely about chugging fluids.
That's often overlooked. The Vietnamese text also mentions that our needs vary, right? Kids need more per kilogram.
Yes, higher ratio for kids.
Hot climates mean more evaporation, so higher needs. Physical activity obviously increases needs too.
Makes sense.
On average, adults take in about 900 to 1,500 milliliters from drinks daily, around 55% of total intake. And about 30% comes from food.
It's worth noting, as the text does, the diuretic effect of things like alcohol, tea, coffee, They provide water, but also increase water loss.
Bit of a trade-off there.
And the water content of food itself is substantial, as the Vietnamese text points out. Some foods are up to 96% water.
Like watermelon or cucumber.
Exactly. Most solid foods are over 50% water. A typical 2,000-calorie diet might give you 500 to 800 milliliters of water just from the solids.
So that raises an important point about how we think about fluid intake, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We focus so much on drinking water, but food is a major contributor, often overlooked. Think how refreshing juicy fruit is. That's hydration.
Okay, so that's water coming in. What about going out? How do we lose it?
The Vietnamese text breaks this down too. The biggest route, no surprise, is urine. About 97% of daily loss.
97%.
Yeah. Our kidneys filter a massive amount of blood, 125 milliliters a minute, it says, and then reabsorb most of the water. Average urine output is maybe 1 to 2 liters a day.
But we need a minimum, right, to flush out waste.
Yes, a minimum of around 300 to 500 milliliters is required just to excrete metabolic wastes. So even if you're trying to cut back, your body needs to produce some urine.
Right, can't stop that process.
We also lose water through our skin, about 350 to 700 milliliters a day normally, but way more in hot or humid conditions.
And the text noted, kids lose water through skin faster than adults.
Yes, higher rate. That's why they can get dehydrated more quickly, especially with fever or in heat.
Good point. And breathing. Can't forget breathing.
We lose water continuously just exhaling, about 300 milliliters a day on average.
Wow.
And in really dry climates, that loss plus skin evaporation can actually exceed the amount lost in urine.
That's significant. Finally, fecal water loss.
Relatively small, around 200 milliliters daily, which is amazing considering how much water gets secreted into the digestive tract, like 8 to 10 liters. Most gets reabsorbed.
It really is a constant cycle, water moving through your body.
Constantly in flux. So with all this coming in and going out, what are the actual requirements? How much do we need?
Yeah, the bottom line. The Vietnamese text states a general daily need of about 2 liters from food and drinks to balance losses. Minimum 1.5 liters, even if you're not losing much.
And it gives that rule of thumb. About 1 liter of water per 1,000 calories eaten for adults.
Yeah, and 1.5 liters per 1,000 calories for children. They also mention roughly 2/3 of intake from drinks, 1/3 from food.
And for kids specifically.
About 150 milliliters per kilogram of body weight per day. It also notes breast milk is 80% water, usually enough for exclusively breastfed babies in the first 6 months.
Okay, so that's one perspective. What about Mayo Clinic?
Their article gives similar but slightly different guidelines. They suggest about 15.5 cups, that's 3.7 liters of fluids a day for men.
Higher than the 2 liters.
Yeah, and about 11.5 cups, or 2.7 liters, for women. It's interesting, isn't it? That difference between the sources.
Could be cultural diets, different research focus, maybe definitions of fluids.
Possibly. Importantly, the Mayo Clinic numbers cover all fluid sources.
Yeah.
And they estimate about 20% comes from food, which aligns roughly with the other text.
And they mention the classic 8-ounce glasses a day rule.
They do, saying it's a reasonable starting point, but really emphasizing that individual needs vary a lot. Depends on activity, climate, health.
Both sources agree on the factors that increase needs, though. Exercise,
Hot weather, high altitudes, fever, vomiting, diarrhea,
bladder infections, kidney stones.
pregnancy, breastfeeding, all increase needs.
Makes sense.
And Mayo Clinic rightly points out, listen to your thirst and check your urine color.
The P test.
Yeah. Colorless or light yellow means you're probably hydrated. Their advice is simple. Drink water with and between meals and whenever you feel thirsty.
Sounds straightforward. Now, this brings us nicely to the real-life wellness video stuff, focusing on practical benefits like weight management and energy.
Right. It echoes that idea that water can help you feel full. Drink it before meals, maybe eat less because sometimes we confuse thirst and hunger.
Yeah, that stomach signal isn't always specific, is it? I need something. Water can help figure out if it's fluids or food.
They even had a graphic showing that fullness feeling. The transcript also talks about water boosting metabolism.
Temporarily increasing resting metabolic rate, yeah. Some studies suggest that.
And it highlights that our liver needs water to burn fat effectively. So being dehydrated could actually slow down weight loss efforts.
Interesting link. The video transcript also really pushes the connection between hydration and energy levels.
Yeah, they say even mild dehydration can lead to fatigue, dizziness, less physical performance. They called water the lubricant for our body's engine.
Nice metaphor.
Proper hydration, they explain, lets blood carry oxygen and nutrients better, giving you sustained energy without those sugar crashes.
And they suggest making water more appealing, like adding fruit for flavor.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for you in terms of daily habits?
Well, real-life wellness gives some really actionable strategies.
Like starting your day with water,
Yeah, kick things off hydrated, drinking water before meals, carrying a reusable bottle, that constant visual reminder.
setting phone reminders. Some people need that.
Sure. And infusing water with lemon, berries, cucumber, whatever, just for variety.
They also briefly mention electrolytes, right, for very active people.
Yeah, just generally that electrolyte replenishment can be helpful without pushing any specific products in the bits we saw.
Good. And it's important we touch on the hydration myths they address.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like the idea that only plain water counts.
Right. They clarify. Unsweetened tea, herbal infusions, high water fruits and veggies, they all contribute.
Important clarification. Another myth. You need to drink tons of water.
Yeah, they quickly point out overhydration is a real thing, can be harmful. Hyponatremia, diluted blood sodium, not good.
The key is listening to your body's cues, like thirst.
And finally, the coffee tea thing.
Yeah.
Do they count or not?
They explain that
It's about supporting everything from your cells working properly to your energy levels throughout the day.
maybe consider tracking your own water intake for a few days. See how you feel. You might be surprised by the direct impact proper hydration has on your overall well-being.
Yeah, that's a great final thought. What small change could you make today to prioritize your hydration? Something to think about.
Definitely.
Thanks for diving deep with us into this really essential topic.